I'm still in the bunker near Liberty's Watch because it is too dangerous for me to return to the Old Kingdom. I will instead make my way to the center of the power node here. I will have to be a distraction for you all, so you might not hear from me for a while. But I will leave instructions and will not abandon you on this great mission. Do not fear for me. I believe I am protected by the vests I created for us all. A special thanks to the Siamese Dream Catz for mining more of the element inside the rocky cave at Misty Forest. You all should have vests too now, so we won't be corrupted while traveling through the portals to our future destinations. The shadows are trying to mess with my mind here, though. I've seen so much, though. I think I am underestimated. Probably why I was even allowed to wander the wastelands. I am forced to let you in on the calculations of the home base findings, and while I need more information to truly know, I will complete them on the run. One thing I know is that 4 guaranteed contenders have had plenty of success at their home bases. The Great Superior Superb Owls have 5 wins at the Great Superior Eye. Green Acres has 5 wins at the Blue Dunes. And Galgal has 5 wins at the Golden Sands. And while Risky Business started bad at the Old Kingdom, a recent run of wins plus road success with 6 wins suggests that the power was still very strong there, and that Risky Business was tied to it. Perhaps the Old Kingdom's power node is just fluctuating more than the others. It also seems that the 5 who are fighting for the final 2 spots will most likely have at least 4 wins at their home bases. The 3 who will not be joining us on the rest of the journey all failed to win more than 3 games at home. This suggests to me that these power nodes are too weak to use and might be more susceptible to the shadow's influence. I do not have much time before I need to make my move here. Remember, the shadows can mess with you but shouldn't be able to infect you with these vests on. The prophecy states that one of us makes it inside the Great Pyramid. That doesn't mean that we succeed, or that all of us make it. The shadows could also be influencing everything based on its seemingly infinite power through time and space. Please remain in your power nodes and avoid any minions of the shadows. You will be hearing from me again once more before your journeys. Until then, good luck.
The world's essence slows, shadows spread from the pyramids to the oceans to the coasts. But behold the test, a smoking gun, a quest passed down for generations. A prophesized hero, the champion. In order to save everyone, thou must drink from the cup. 12 of us on this mission. What's next? 17 weeks to be the best. Injuries and buys, thou should have guessed. The waiver wire request was denied, but maybe a trade will provide an edge and a chance to be a legend. Fight for humanity, reach the goal. It's a quest for the green ball. Green ball. It's a quest for the green It's a quest for the green ball. Let's do this. Let's do this. It's a quest for the green ball. Green ball.
Welcome to the quest for the Green Ball, the Shadows of Chaos. I'm your host, Anthony Ozo, bringing you this fantasy football show with a twist. And of course, we are in the midst of the most exciting week of the regular season, the finale, week 14. One division title is still up for grabs, and 5 teams will be fighting for the final 2 wild card spots. Only 3 of the 12 teams are officially eliminated right now, and every match this week will mold the final playoff spots and seeds. And the first round buys, both are still up for grabs, with 4 teams potentially in the mix for those 2 big spots to get the bye right to the semifinals. Of course, the mysterious stranger seems to be in a little trouble right now, but if he could survive the post-apocalyptic world for so long and use his science abilities to help us, I have confidence he will survive to continue to help us. That confidence might not be with all of our teams, though, heading into the final week, and I will, of course, preview these big-time matches a little bit later. Injuries, of course, have piled up as well, so I will go over the injury report once more before we get into the craziness of the playoffs and consolation playoffs. But before any of that, we need to go over the results of Week 13. In the Central Territory, Loki Lebowski Thor hosted Meowmaster at the Philosopher's Swamp and took care of business with a 98.2-48 win. Lebowski Thor had an 88.4% chance to win that ballooned to 97% once Jalen Hurts was ruled out. Cousins had a couple of touchdowns, and Fournette scored again. Keenan Allen had a couple of touchdowns as well, and the Buccaneers defense added 5 sacks and a fumble recovery. Mike Davis and Logan Thomas reached the end zone for Meowmaster, but 3 zeros limited overall production. Lebowski Thor moves to 7-6 overall and is back in the top 6. Meowmaster falls to 2-11. Also in the Central Territory, with my great superior Superb Owls travel to the Steel Shores to take on My Heart Will Go On, and while the results were not even close to what was predicted, my Superb Owls still collected a 95.96 to 86.66 win. It was the George Kittle show as he went off for 186 total yards and 2 scores. Jacobs added a touchdown, and the Miami defense had a nice day with 3 sacks and an interception. Pollard had a 50-plus yard score for My Heart Will Go On, and Javonte Williams and Deontay Johnson both had big games. Johnson caught 2 scores, and Williams had a touchdown and 178 yards despite losing a fumble. It wasn't enough, though, as My Heart Will Go On fell to 5-8 and is officially eliminated from postseason contention. The Superb Owls, which already clinched a Central Territory last week, are now 9-4 and are still in play for that first-round bye. Moving on to the insanity that was the Eastern Territory, Green Acres hosted the multiple scoregasms at the Blue Dunes with a chance to clinch the division and the number 1 overall seed. And while the scoregasms were already eliminated from the postseason with the other leagues' results, the Scoregasms played spoiler here with a 99.9 to 84.48 win. Gibson had 111 yards and a touchdown, and Higgins added 138 yards and a score. Godwin collected 152 yards, and Mitchell also reached the end zone. The Cardinals defense had 3 sacks and 4 interceptions for a nice 11-point game, and kicker Matt Gay went off for 3 field goals and 4 extra points. Herbert had a big game with 3 touchdowns for Green Acres, and Eckler and Peterson scored as well. The Patriots D added 2 sacks and a fumble recovery on Monday night, but an early Adam Thielen injury led to a big 0, and the absence of Darrell Henderson didn't help either. Green Acres falls to 9-4, but can still clinch both the division and number 1 overall seed in Week 14. The multiple scoregasms move to 5-8. The other Eastern Territory game was a big one too, as Remember the Titans traveled to the Old Kingdom to take on Risky Business with the Tripod Award back up for grabs. Risky Business not only retained the Tripod Award with a 106.22 to 102.6 win, but also kept the dream alive for a division title and a first-round bye. Risky Business had a huge day by Tom Brady, who had 368 passing yards and 4 touchdowns, and Madison added 124 yards and a score. Pittman had 110 total yards, and Lockett found the end zone too. The game actually came down to Sunday night with Clyde Edwards-Helaire going up against Remember the Titans first-round pick Travis Kelce. Remember the Titans was up 2 points, but ended up losing by less than 4 as Edwards-Helaire outgained Kelce 82 to 27 yards. Joe Burrow threw and rushed for touchdowns, but hurt his finger and was limited to under 20 points for Remember the Titans. And Jefferson had a monster 182-yard game with a score. Kupp added 129 yards and a touchdown, and Lamb collected 122 yards. Risky Business clinches a postseason berth and moves to 8-5 with so much more to play for in Week 14. Remember the Titans falls to 6-7, but will still have a shot at a wild card in Week 14. Onto the Western Territory as Gal traveled to the Skyward Peaks to take on Uncle Justy with a chance to clinch the Western Territory. Gal entered with a 54% chance to win, and the fantasy gods obliged with a windy Monday night game to allow him to eke out a 97.72 to 94.6 win over Uncle Justy. Uncle Justy had a chance with Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs on Monday night, but the two just missed touchdown connections twice. And Allen was stopped in the red zone twice. Jonathan Taylor was once again big for Gal with 143 yards and 2 scores, and Elijah Moore also caught a touchdown. Najee Harris and Mike Williams combined for 217 total yards. Michelle added 129 yards and a touchdown for Uncle Justy, and Gronkowski reached the end zone twice. Renfro collected 102 yards, and the Rams defense picked up 2 sacks and 2 fumble recoveries. Of course, Gal now clinches the Western Territory division, moving to 9-4, and just needs a win to get a first-round bye. Uncle Justy falls to 6-7, but is still very much alive in the playoff race. And that brings us to where the Stellar Bitches hosted the Siamese Dream Catz at the Western Territory's Misty Forest.
This was a big game of the week for both teams' playoff hopes, and it was the Dream Catz coming away with the 96.52 to 70 win. Montgomery led the way for the Cats with 141 yards and a touchdown, and Connor and Freeman also both found the end zone. Jackson scored as well and added 55 rushing yards to his 253 passing yards. Metcalf, a key to the game, had his best game since week 8, but he still ended up with just 60 yards. On the bitches side, her key to the game, Miles Sanders, finally had a nice game with 142 yards, but he was injured late and couldn't reach the end zone. Stafford did throw for 3 touchdowns with 295 passing yards, and Mike Evans added 99 yards, but no one else stepped up as the bitches are now on life support in the playoff race headed into the final week of the regular season. The Siamese Dream Catz, on the other hand, have as legit a chance as any team fighting for a playoff spot. With this win, the Cats still need some help and must win in week 14, but it could have been much worse. Of course, I am joined by the Dream Catz sitting next to me here at the Misty Forest, hopefully protected from the shadows with our mineral vests we are wearing under our clothes. The Dream Catz is my fiancé, Alexandria. How's it going, sweetie? You feeling good after getting this game of the week win?
Yes.
Is that all you got to say?
Yes.
Really?
Yes, I feel very good.
Well, the mysterious stranger does thank you for mining all those elements that we needed to protect us from the shadows as well.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm excited.
Well, you clearly were preparing yourself for a tough end to the season and like to roll with a similar lineup each week, barring injury. But now that you got this win and have a chance to make the playoffs in this final week of the regular season, are you still confident? Or are you still preparing to just miss it?
So I think that fantasy football is basically gambling. I don't really have a feeling either way because it's gambling and I refuse to give it mythical significance. But I mean, I have a shot to win and I would like to win some money. So yes.
Now, I have to say that I'm not sure I believe you 100% there because you've been in some of the craziest games this season. You lost a close one to me by percentage points. You lost several games scoring over 100 points, including one over 130, and you've also won some very high-scoring, close games by percentage points in a couple of them. So I have to say that your feelings have been kind of up and down this season with your team, I feel. But you're telling me that your feelings have just kind of been the same?
No, I'm just saying that I'm not, I'm not emotionally invested in the sports of it. I would really like to win some money, and I'm trying to use logic, even though there's a lot of chance involved. So sometimes you win and sometimes you don't.
I got you. I mean, that kind of brings me to my next question as well, because I know you're not a sports girl. And if it wasn't for us egging you on to join the league 7 years ago, I doubt you'd even be playing fantasy football.
I would not.
I'm sure your friends make fun of you for that.
I do really well for somebody that knows nothing about football. I will say.
I have to say, you've made some good moves. You've drafted
That's
well.
because it's math. It's math and probability and risk. That's because that's what it is.
You've also cut setting your lineup errors like to almost none, where you still set your lineup every week, so you're playing.
Yes, I play. I play.
You even
for
stole
the money.
James Conner from me, which I was a little upset.
What are you talking about? You screwed me over in the draft.
How did I do that?
He screwed me over in the draft. Just know that.
Are you talking about Patrick Mahomes?
I am.
Hey, Patrick Mahomes was on the board, and I snatched him up.
Yeah, after convincing me that I should try and take him, and you knew your pick was before mine, and you convinced me to take what was it? A running back?
Yeah.
A running back before I took a quarterback, he said, and then he goes and takes my quarterback. So, yep. Just saying.
Now, that is absolutely false, by the way. What I said was that it's not a good strategy to draft a quarterback before the 4th round. That's all I said.
Oh, yeah, that's what he said after I told him I wanted Patrick Mahomes. So.
Yeah, but you did get David Montgomery, who's helped you win a couple of games. So.
Yeah.
And Patrick Mahomes has actually been kind of downhill for me at this point. So
true, but again, that could have also been probability and chance. You know, you rolled the dice didn't like you.
So I do have to say, do you have a difference in opinion from fantasy when you started to now?
Yeah, I think it's fun.
So you are happy.
I think it's fun. I think the, football players have nice butts. That's a win for me either way. I enjoy shit talking with other people. Those are the pluses. The cons for me are that I just think it's, the way the game is currently played, like the overpoweredness of the players. It's just like there's so many injuries that you might as well just be, blindfolded throwing darts at the board. You just don't know what's going to happen ever because they push the players so hard. They just are bound to get injured in any number of millions of horrible ways. So it's kind of like cockfighting, to be honest.
Yeah, it is a war of attrition, that is for sure.
And I'm against that because I'm a humane individual. So it's, sometimes I feel a little ethics issues with fantasy football and football in general, but
we're not injuring the players. That's the sport is.
Yeah, they're being compensated. Well, I don't want to get into it.
Yeah, that's a whole nother.
I don't want to get into it. I'm just not sure I like the ethics of it. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to ask though, are you expecting a very close game against Uncle Justy this week, knowing
yes, because he does very well.
Yes.
He does very well, and he's kicked my butt a few times. So
I do want to finish up.
I don't actually think I'm going to win. I don't think I'm going to win the league at all. I just don't. It's not going to happen.
And that's when it does happen, folks, by the way. That's when you win, when you're just I don't care anymore.
I don't know about that. But
look at our league and who has won titles. Look at me, I'm master.
She's got her hands full. And,
well,
luck is luck.
I do want to finish up here as we are in our final 4 episodes coming up. These next 4 episodes after this one, we're going to get the rest of all my post-apocalyptic sci-fi sort of cosmic horror theme story going with the conclusion. How excited are you to see it all come together? Because you've kind of been watching me do bits and pieces and are just like, you've mentioned that my details are pretty intense. So. Yeah,
I'm very impressed with your creativity. I think it would make a really nice book. I do.
Well, that's definitely nice to hear, and I'm excited. Are you worried about the mysterious stranger?
Yeah, for my own reasons. Yes. I worry for the mysterious stranger.
I'm glad the Siamese Dream Catz were finally able to make it on the show. There is a possibility, of course, that my Super Bowls and the Dream Catz play in the first round of the playoffs, depending on what happens. And that would be pretty insane. And of course, the Dream Catz talked about the injuries and how tough that is. And it's tough. So many of our top picks are out right now, and obviously it's tough for the players. Nobody wants the players to be hurt. I'm always one that wants the entire league to be just completely healthy. But I really wanted to take a look now at our fantasy teams and the injured players and players that are banged up, because it could definitely mean it could be the difference between making the playoffs or making a run in the playoffs. So I think it's time to look ahead to the injury report. All right, there's a lot of guys on this injury report, so we're going to go team to team, division to division. So we're going to start in the Eastern Territory, since there's so much to play for this week with those matchups, starting with the multiple scoregasms. Bengals wide receiver T. Higgins, ankle injury. He's questionable, but expected to play this week. We'll see what happens with practices, but T. Higgins obviously made a huge touchdown last week. It's going to be very key for the scoregasms. 49ers running back Eli Mitchell is in the concussion protocol and still was in the concussion protocol at this taping, but I would think that he'll clear it and play, but we'll have to watch. I mean, that would be a huge loss for the scoregasms. Most likely needs Mitchell to do well. Dolphins wide receiver Will Fuller, finger injury, still on IR, not practicing, not expected to play. Moving on to remember the Titans. Saints quarterback Taysom Hill, finger injury. He's questionable, but expected to play as he turned down surgery, but he could be limited. He does make things happen with his legs, though. He's a kind of a rushing quarterback, so the finger might not matter as much, but we'll see. Jets running back Tevin Coleman is in a concussion protocol, still in the protocol at the time of this taping. And of course, Jets running back Michael Carter, ankle injury on IR. He's out this week. And a third Jets running back was just added to remember the Titans roster here. So going nuts on these Jets running backs. Patriots running back Damian Harris is on a bye, but he had a hamstring injury. So that's something to watch for week 15, especially if, remember, the Titans makes the playoffs. Bengals quarterback Joe Burrow has a finger injury. He's questionable. He's expected to play. Could be limited, though. So we have to watch there. Of course, the two big Eastern Territory teams as they're battling for a division title. Risky business. Saints running back Alvin Kamara, very important for him. Knee injury. He's questionable, possible to play. He did practice a little bit last week, so if he ramps up those practices and gets on the field, that could be a huge boost. Washington football team running back J.D. McKissick was in the concussion protocol. He missed last week because of concussion. Still in the protocol from what I saw. It's rare that guys miss multiple games, so it depends on how severe the concussion is, but that's something to watch. Seahawks running back Alex Collins, an abdomen injury. He's expected back this week, so that could be a boost. Washington football team quarterback Ryan Fitzpatrick, on season-ending IR, as everyone knows, with a hip injury. Risky business, just keeping him on his reserve, probably just because he drafted him. Green Acres, his team, has actually escaped a lot of injuries this year, has a big one, as Vikings wide receiver Adam Thielen, ankle injury. He's doubtful this week. He's expected to be out several weeks, so that he could even come into play in the playoffs. So that's a big loss for Green Acres. Bengals running back Joe Mixon has a neck injury that was just, he reported it after the game. I didn't even see a play that could have happened. He's questionable. He's probable to play right now, unless the neck gets worse. So that's something to watch. Chargers running back Austin Eckler. They said bumps and bruises, and he's questionable. Bumps and bruises. I've never heard of anybody sitting out a game because of bumps and bruises. He's probably going to be limited, maybe sit out a day in practice to heal up a bit, but I expect Eckler to play. Giants wide receiver Sterling Shepard has a quad injury. He's questionable. He was practicing, though, so he might be able to play this week, so that's something to watch. Moving on to the Central Territory. Meow Master, who is well out of everything, also has many, many people injured. Eagles quarterback Jalen Hurts, ankle injuries on a bye this week. He might return in week 15, which could be a boost, I guess, to not be the last place team in the league. Titans running back Derrick Henry, a foot injury, obviously on IR. He's most likely out for the fantasy season. There's a possibility that he comes back for week 17, which I'm guessing will be the last place game for Meow Master, but yeah, I don't know if it's going to matter much here. Titans wide receiver A.J. Brown, chest injury on IR. He's doubtful for this week. Might be back soon, though. Bears quarterback Justin Fields, ribs injury, questionable for this week coming up. Andy Dalton hasn't really done anything, so if the Bears really think they have a shot for the playoffs, if Fields feels good, they're going to play him, so we'll see what happens. Washington football team tight end Logan Thomas, once again on IR. This time it's season ending with a knee injury. And of course, Patriots running back James White had that hip injury. He's most likely on season-ending IR, though they didn't mention it, but he's been out this whole time and is not even mentioned as possibly coming back anytime soon. Moving on to My Heart Will Go On. Packers quarterback Aaron Rodgers with that toe injury. He's questionable, but he's expected to play. It says it's improving too, so that could be a boost. Lions running back DeAndre Swift has a shoulder injury. He's questionable, closer to doubtful for this week, but could be back soon. The Raiders tight end Darren Waller has both knee and back injuries. He's questionable this week. Probably need to watch the practices with Waller. He was week to week last week. Now they're saying he's day to day. So that means there is a chance he comes back. Low-key Lebowski Thor. He's got an injury to Melvin Gordon, the Broncos running back, hip and shoulder. He's questionable. His return depends on practices. Though I believe he was trending up, but we'll see what happens. Chargers wide receiver Keenan Allen's on the COVID-19 list, so he's questionable. He must be asymptomatic for 48 hours and test negative twice to be able to play. So even though he has a shot to come back as he's vaccinated, but whenever I've seen anyone with COVID-19, they tend to miss at least the one game. So we'll see what happens there. Panthers running back Christian McCaffrey, of course, ankle injury. He's on season-ending IR. The number one overall pick in fantasy goes down for the second straight season. Big blow to Lebowski Thor, who still might make the playoffs. So it tells you where he could have been if McCaffrey was actually healthy all season. My great superior superb owls are looking to be the healthiest they've ever been. But you know how that changes week to week. But right now, 49ers wide receiver Deebo Samuel with the groin injury is questionable for this week. He might return this week or next, depending on practices, but he should be back for the playoffs, which I'm excited for. Cardinals running back Chase Edmonds with an ankle injury is on IR right now, but he's expected to be taken off IR, possibly play this week. So I could have nobody injured, going into week 14 possibly. But, again, odds are someone's getting injured, so we'll see what happens. Finally, we move to the Western Territory. The Stellar Bitches have been banged up all year and surprisingly haven't made any coaching moves off the waiver wire, which might be why the Stellar Bitches are most likely about to be eliminated from playoff contention. The Cowboys running back Ezekiel Elliott, knee injury. He's questionable. He's expected to play with limited reps. For some reason, they've been kind of pushing him. They probably should have sat him a couple of weeks. He's very unhealthy. He does not look the same. Falcons wide receiver Calvin Ridley, personal reasons. He's not expected back, and at this point, there hasn't been any word, so I would think he's done for the season at this point. Eagles running back Miles Sanders re-injured his ankle. He's on a bye this week, so we'll see what happens if he comes back for the following week. Dolphins running back Phillip Lindsay, ankle injury on a bye. He might also be back next week. Ravens running back Gus Edwards, for some reason in the starting lineup of the Stellar Bitches with a knee injury. He's on IR. He's expected to be out for the season from what I saw, so I don't think he's coming back anytime soon. The Siamese Dream Catz now, their big injury, the Vikings running back Delvin Cook, shoulder. He's questionable. I think he's closer to doubtful this week, but he has a limited practice, so we'll see what happens. It might be one of those things where he practices a little bit and then still misses the game, or even if he's active, he's an emergency back or limited reps. So I would just assume he's injured this week. Giants wide receiver Kenny Galladay, ribs injury. He's questionable, expected to play from what I saw, as he apparently had negative x-rays on those ribs. Uncle Justy, Browns running back Kareem Hunt, is questionable again with a calf injury, but he's expected to play. They think that he's doing very good after the bye. Titans wide receiver Julio Jones with a hamstring injury. He was just designated to return from IR. Still questionable. It really depends on practices, but that's good news for Uncle Justy, of course. Buccaneers wide receiver Antonio Brown, ankle injury, also suspended. He's out for 2 more weeks because of the suspension, regardless of his injury. Bears running back Tariq Cohen, knee injury on the PUP list. He had setbacks from his ACL recovery, probably done for the season. So it didn't look good for Cohen, and especially as the Bears fall out of it, they're not going to bring him back for no reason. So, and then finally we get to Gal. Jets wide receiver Elijah Moore showing up on the injury list out of nowhere with a quad injury. He's questionable. He already missed 1 practice, so that's something to watch. Raiders running back Kenyon Drake, just absolutely devastated ankle injury. If you saw that tackle that he took against the Washington football team, he's done for the season after having surgery. That's the end of Drake. Seahawks running back Chris Carson with a neck injury. He's not coming back from IR. He's done for the season, most likely having surgery very soon. And of course, these injuries could shape the final results in the regular season. I think it's time to look ahead to the regular season's final week of matchups and how these injuries actually affect us. All right, before we get to the matchups, I wanted to break down the standings and scenarios heading into Week 14 real quick. The Central Territory and Western Territory titles are locked up with My Great Superior Superb Owls and Gal as the division champs, respectively. In the Eastern Territory, the division title will come down to the Risky Business versus Green Acres game, which I'll get to soon. Both teams have already clinched postseason spots, however, as the losing team will still have a wild card guaranteed. The first round buys might come down to the Eastern Territory title match as well. A Great Superior Superb Owls win and a Risky Business win means the Superb Owls get a bye. If Gal loses in that scenario, the Superb Owls will be the number 1 seed and Risky Business would be the number 2 seed. If Gal wins in that scenario, Gal is the number 1 seed and the Superb Owls are the number 2 seed. However, if Green Acres wins, Green Acres is the top overall seed. If Gal wins in that scenario, or the Superb Owls lose, Gal is the number 2 seed. If Gal loses in that scenario and the Superb Owls win, then the Superb Owls would get the number 2 seed. Green Acres can be no lower than the 4th seed at this point, and Risky Business can be no lower than the 5th seed at this point. As for the rest of the wild cards, there are 5 teams fighting for 2 spots. Loki Lebowski Thor just needs a win to get into the playoffs and will be the number 4 seed. If Green Acres wins the Eastern Territory, or a number 5 seed if Risky Business wins the Eastern Territory. Remember, the Titans can also get into the playoffs with a win. If Loki Lebowski Thor wins, remember the Titans would be the number 6 seed. If Loki Lebowski Thor loses, then remember the Titans will be the 5th seed. Of course, Uncle Justy, the Siamese Dream Catz, and the Stellar Bitches can also make the playoffs. The only way for the Stellar Bitches to make it is with a win, a very unexpected tie by Uncle Justy and the Siamese Dream Catz, although it could happen, and a loss by Remember the Titans. Again, not very likely, unfortunately, for the Stellar Bitches. Uncle Justy gets in with a win and a Remember the Titans loss, and the Dream Catz get in with a win and a Remember the Titans loss. So watch those matches this week. In case of tiebreakers, if 4 teams finish 7-7 with the Dream Catz beating Uncle Justy, Remember the Titans would be 3-0 against that field. Stellar Bitches 0-4. Lebowski Thor 2-1. Siamese Dream Catz would be 2-2. So Remember the Titans gets the 5 seed, and then Lebowski Thor would get the 6 seed in that scenario. Even if the Stellar Bitches lose and just 3 teams are 7-7 in that scenario, it would be the same. Remember the Titans 5 seed, Lebowski Thor 6 seed. If the Remember the Titans loses, Lebowski Thor is the 5 seed and the Dream Catz would be the 6 seed. But if Uncle Justy beats the Dream Catz, the tiebreakers change a little bit. With 4 teams, they are Remember the Titans at 3-0, Uncle Justy at 5-1, Lebowski Thor 1 and 2, and the Stellar Bitches 0 and 4. Remember, the Titans would be the 5 seed, and Uncle Justy would be the 6 seed. If the Stellar Bitches lose, remember the Titans would be the 5 seed, and Uncle Justy would be the 6 seed, so it remains the same. If remember the Titans lose, Uncle Justy is 5, and Lebowski Thor is 6. So every game is going to matter going into this final week. It's going to be pretty insane. And we're going to start in the Central Territory with my 9-4 Great Superior Superb Owls hosting 2-11 Meow Master at the Great Superior Eye. And of course, my Superb Owls have a 98% chance to win. Tyreek Hill versus DeAndre Hopkins, Josh Jacobs versus Mike Davis, Michael Gallup versus Amari Cooper, and the Saints defense versus the 49ers defense are matchups to watch. In the other matchup, 5-8, My Heart Will Go On hosts 7-6 low-key Lebowski Thor at Steel Shores. Lebowski Thor enters with a 55.9% chance to win. Aaron Rodgers versus Kyler Murray, Javonte Williams versus Melvin Gordon if he plays, and Devontae Adams and Deontay Johnson versus DJ Moore and Odell Beckham Jr. are all matchups to watch here, as it's not necessarily clear-cut that Lebowski Thor sneaks out with a win. Now to the Western Territory as division champion 9-4 Galgal looks to secure his first round bye, hosting 6-7 the Stellar Bitches at the Golden Sands. Galgal comes in with a 69.5% chance to win. Dak Prescott versus Matthew Stafford, Mike Evans versus Mike Williams, and the Bills defense versus the Packers defense are the matchups to watch here. In what might be deemed as a potential play-in game, 6-7 Uncle Justy travels to the Sea of Angels to take on the 6-7 Siamese Dream Catz. The Dream Catz enter with a 54.4% chance to win in what is expected to be a very close match. Josh Allen versus Lamar Jackson, Jamar Chase versus Stephon Diggs, and Saquon Barkley and Chuba Hubbard versus James Conner and Devonta Freeman all look like matchups to watch. Lastly, in the Eastern Territory, 6-7, remember the Titans hosts 5-8, the multiple scoregasms at Liberty's Watch, and remember the Titans comes in with a 60.3% chance to win. Ryan Tannehill versus Taysom Hill, the Scoregasms running backs versus remember the Titans wide receivers, and the Chargers defense versus the Titans defense are all major areas to watch in this matchup. And that brings us to in this we get two teams that have already clinched postseason berths, but they're now fighting for the Eastern Territory title and a potential first-round bye. 9-4 Green Acres, of course, needs a win. He'll be the division champion and the number 1 overall seed. 8-5 Risky Business needs a win to be the division champion. Risky Business can also get a first-round bye with a win and a Galgal loss. Of course, this match is at the home of Risky Business at the Old Kingdom, and road games have actually been much kinder to him so far. But before we get any further in this matchup, I'm getting an incoming message from the mysterious stranger.
If you are receiving this message, I had to escape and go into hiding to protect you all from the shadows. Those of you at the Old Kingdom fighting for the Eastern Territory crown, it will now be up to you to get yourselves and the other 4 Chosen One contenders to your designated places to ready yourselves for the Chosen One tournament and also to search for the lost relic. The top 2 teams will head right to the Coliseum of Warriors. The other 4 will go to the Tower of Lightning. Coordinates are already set on my time scoop, but the final power node data needs to be entered into the system. I transferred access to your area before I left the Old Kingdom, just in case. The data needs to be correct, or the time scoop will be unstable and might send you to a place in time that isn't where you're supposed to be. And there is the distinct possibility you are lost in time and space, but that is a risk you will all have to take to save humanity. Also, those of you at the Liberty's Watch this week, be wary of the Yeti. You should be safe inside your power node, but that Yeti is clearly something conjured by the shadows. You must hold your ground and not leave the center of the node. Or you could be attacked, like I was. That Yeti did break through the room I was in, but I set up a booby trap that sprayed a chemical in its eyes to blind it for a few minutes so I could get away. The crazy thing is that I felt like the walls and the space around me was trying to hold me back. It was like I was running through oil. But I made it back inside the power node and am seconds away from launching myself through a portal. I mustn't tell you where I'm going, though, in the hopes that the shadows follow me and leave you alone long enough for you to get to your designated areas. With the vests and the power node protection, things should be okay. Until then, good luck and beware the shadows. Oh yeah, one more thing.
Risky Business hasn't finalized his lineup yet, so Green Acres enters with a 71.9% chance to win. The percentage will come down if Alvin Kamara is back for Risky Business and the defense is selected. It might be closer to 50-50, to be honest. At the moment, Justin Herbert versus Tom Brady will be a big matchup. Brady has a tough one against the Bills, but literally likes to throw and throw and throw. Plus, Gronkowski's been back catching multiple touchdowns. Herbert has actually struggled in random spots, and the Giants' defense can sometimes play well, so we do have to watch that. The amount of wide receiver touchdowns could also be big here, with Lockett and McLaurin for Risky Business, and A.J. Green and Westbrook-Ikhine for Green Acres. That could be an area where Risky Business could actually make up a lot of ground in this matchup. With the Patriots' defense on a bye, the Seattle versus whoever Risky Business takes could be very big as well. But there are major keys in this match that could end up leading to a division title. For Risky Business, I look to running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Edwards-Helaire has been limited by injuries this season, but has 14 touches and 17 touches in the 2 games he's been back after a 5-game absence. With just 3 double-digit point games and 7 games played this season, Edwards-Helaire has not been very consistent. But with the volume, good matchups could lead to pay dirt. The Raiders have allowed the 6th most points to the running back position this season, 1,205 yards and 9 touchdowns on the ground, and 483 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns through the air. The Raiders are allowing 19.3 points per game to the running back position this season, and that could mean the best game for Edwards-Helaire, which would be a huge boost for Risky Business's division title chances. For Green Acres, I turn to running back Darrell Henderson, who was essentially out last week despite being active. When Henderson is healthy, he is fairly consistent with 7 of 10 games in double digits for non-PPR fantasy. He has 820 yards and 8 touchdowns this season, but Arizona isn't the easiest of matchups. Henderson did have 116 yards the last time he played the Cardinals in Week 4, but Arizona has allowed just 5 touchdowns to running backs all season, including none through the air. The Cardinals have allowed 1,114 yards on the ground and 564 yards through the air against the position, but they have been pretty stout in the red zone. If Henderson is held without a touchdown, that would be a big blow to Green Acres. But if Henderson is able to score, that could be a big reason why Green Acres is the division champ and the number 1 overall seed. And that's the show for the week. I hope you enjoyed it. The next 4 weeks, we will go through our playoff bracket until a Green Bowl champion is crowned, and we will get the exciting conclusion of our post-apocalyptic sci-fi theme story, which does have some cosmic horror thrown in, of course. It will be incredibly fun, and I can only hope that I am the chosen one. Before we go, let's look at the power rankings headed into the final week of the regular season. Please follow the SunDried Tomatoes YouTube channel and watch content including original shows like Legends of the Diamond, random reactions, and Brewing the Facts, the SunDried Tomatoes podcast in video form, and other sports, brewing, or entertainment-related videos. You can like the Facebook page and follow me on Instagram at eclectic_yotso for news updates and just to get to know me better.